Hi guys, I'm afraid I don't have the brain power these days to produce any kind of somewhat intellectual content. So what I thought I'd do today is simply show you some of my favorite book covers so that we all have something nice to look at. When I say some of my favorite book covers, it's because whenever I want to name favorites, my mind goes completely blank and I forget everything I've ever known. So even though I've browsed my bookshelves for quite some time, it is well inside the realm of possibility that I have forgotten some of my favorite book covers today. And B, in some cases, I don't have the physical book, either because I have the book as an ebook or I don't own the book in the edition with a cover that I like, because I usually have to buy whatever edition it is that I can get my hands on or that doesn't cost me an arm and a leg. And second disclaimer, and I'm sure I'm not alone with this, but for me, in order to qualify as a favorite, a book cover, it is not enough for a book cover to just look pretty, but it has to use this prettiness and or originality of design in order to convey something essential about the book, be it genre or plot points or writing style. So both have to be present usually. A cover has to be both aesthetically pleasing and meaningful in some way. So let's give you a negative example. The cover art of the Essex Serpent by Sarah Perry is certainly very pretty, very decorative, but it actually has very little to do with the book. Sure, there is a serpent on here, but the art style is actually pretty wishy-washy and it can't be attributed to any certain time. It certainly doesn't scream 1893, which is when the book is set or when the story begins. But there is also too much flourish, too much detail on here for it to look like a medieval illumination of scripture, which is a bit what the book is about. Scripture does play a minor role in the book, I guess. But to me, it just looks as if the cover artist got two keywords, namely serpent and historical novel, and then they just went wild. And it doesn't really capture what the book feels like and what the writing style feels like either. So it's pretty but not very impressive and a bit of a lost opportunity almost. Similarly, Deeplight by Frances Hardinge, the story does take place, at least part of the story does take place in an underwater realm. But let's be honest, maritime imagery is kind of the low-hanging fruit of design and decoration, so this doesn't really qualify as a favorite cover either. But enough with the negativity, and let me show you some of my favorite covers of recent years. First up, I have A Dead Man in Deptford by Anthony Burgess. This was one of my favorite books of last year, and I like the vintage red spine editions in general because they are all designed like this. They are all just plain white with one meaningful item taking center stage. And in this case, A Dead Man in Deptford is the story of the Elizabethan playwright Christopher Marlowe, who was rumored to have been in the intelligence service of the English crown. And if he was, then his violent death was most likely connected to this job. And here on this cover, we have the crown, but it is also a skull. And similarly, Bloody Scotland. This is an anthology of crime short stories, and I'm afraid this horrible award sticker almost ruins the whole effect. But here on this cover, we have a splash of blood, but it is also Scotland. Next up, I have a German space opera. This is Neptunation by Dietmar. This is an alternate history space opera in which, at the end of the Cold War, the Soviet Union, in collaboration with the German Democratic Republic, sends a mission into space which vanishes completely. The last thing that Earth ever hears from the mission is a call for help or some sort of signal sent apparently from Neptune. And then 30 years later, still, I think in an alternate universe, alternate history, Germany and China send a rescue mission into space, or at least a mission that is supposed to shed some light on what happened to the first mission. And I think we have it all here in the cover. The retro look of the color scheme, as well as of the spacesuit, the red color, and the sun rays. And I think it makes for an absolutely stunning combination too. And then I have two books which, in contrast to the Essex Serpent, managed to take the art style of the time in which the book is set, but give it a decidedly modern twist. I have The Western Wind by Samantha Harvey, which is set at the end of the 15th century. And this looks like a wood print, but also not quite medieval. It has a modern touch to it. And this is German, or a German translation of Egyptian texts. It is an anthology of ancient pharaonic Egyptian texts with Egyptian iconography, so the lotus plants, the Nile, the ibis. But of course, it doesn't look pharaonic, it looks decidedly modern. Also, among my favorites are these editions of Tolkien's works. Now, I don't actually have The Lord of the Rings in this edition, which I think is the one book for which this edition, this cover design works best. In The Lord of the Rings, we have the 3 volumes of the trilogy, and each volume has the same black cover with just a plain ring in the center. It's in a different color in each volume. But it also works very well for the Silmarillion, because here we have well, it is supposed to be a gemstone, because in the Silmarillion, or for large parts of the Silmarillion, the fight about a gemstone plays a significant role. And it's the same in the Unfinished Tales, although the gem looks different, but I guess it's supposed to be the same gem. And who doesn't like the dragon on the cover of The Hobbit? And also a great marriage of cover design and title is The Girl Who Circumnavigated Fairyland in a Ship of Her Own Making by Catherynne and Valente, in which title and cover design are equally as baroque. And because, truth be told, I like a bit of eye candy on my bookshelves as much as the next person, some of my favorite covers are also those of the 4 books in the Raven cycle by Maggie Stiefvater, which are The Raven Boys, The Dream Thieves, Blue Lily, Lily Blue, and The Raven King. I think this one's my favorite. It's just so stunning, and I just love stags. And of course, nature writing comes between stunning covers, or at least they have been stunning in recent years. So let me show you some of my favorites. This is Sea Room by Adam Nicolson, which, as the catchphrase says, is the story of 1 man, 3 islands, and 500,000 puffins. And I love this minimalist cover of The Living Mountain by Nan Shepherd, with the red deer in a snowy landscape. I also like this one quite a lot, The Moor by William Atkins, but I do think that the stupid award sticker, fake sticker, and the testimonies kind of ruin the effect of the fog here in the upper half of the cover. Also nice, Love of Country, A Hebridean Journey by Madeleine Bunting, with this naive but also cleverly colored depiction of an island archipelago. and Under the Rock by Benjamin Myers. Stunning lush cover. The paperback edition comes with a slightly different color scheme with lighter blue or even teal tones, which is also very pretty. But as much as I love these lush and rich covers, I also quite like a minimalist cover design. For instance, the Faber and Faber poetry collections. And I think it's almost impossible anyway to express the essence of a poetry collection in a single cover image. So this is maybe the best way to go anyway. And it's also great if you have a large collection of these, I think. And there is actually a German equivalent to this cover design. It's the design of the Surkamp editions. These are actually quite fancy for Surkamp editions. They often don't contain a picture on the cover. Surkamp publishes fiction, but first and foremost, philosophy and social sciences. And I've combed my shelves, but I haven't found a book in the classic Surkamp edition design, which is just plain black with a title in a different color for each book. They used to be color coded, but I'm not sure how it is these days. But what I can show you is a notebook in the design of a classic Surkamp edition book. This notebook is a bit smaller than they usually come in the size. So yeah, I just really like this, especially if you have a large collection, which I don't. I used to have more of them, but I'm in the habit of giving my books away if I don't use them anymore. And the last cover that I'd like to show you is pretty, but it is also, for me, first and foremost funny. It is the cover of The War of the Flowers by Ted Williams. This is a portal fantasy in which Fairyland has developed to a more or less steampunk level. And this cover shows Cologne Cathedral, or the spires of Cologne Cathedral, with the railway bridge over the River Rhine in front of it. This is actually quite a good choice for this story, because here we have the Gothic architecture that is reminiscent of fairy architecture, and we also have this steel architecture from the end of the 19th century, so which is the steampunk era. So this is quite a good design for this story, but for me it is also funny because I live in Cologne, so it always amuses me, this cover. But very pretty and actually quite clever as well. Oh, so these are some of my favorite book covers. What are some of your favorite book covers? Actually, I'm thinking about turning this into a tag. I can certainly talk about my favorite covers for another 10 minutes in another video, no problem at all. I just have to think of some interesting questions once my brain works at its normal capacity again. Until then, I hope you all stay safe. Bye.